Welcome to this DragonLance Saga Gaming Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition episode. It is Kirinor Dark Ember the 9th. My name is Adam. I'm starting a Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition Dragonlance Shadows of the Dragon Queen game in December, so I thought it'd be fun to read the free basic rules aloud and discuss them with the live audience if you happen to be tuning in and you happen to want to talk. If not, it's just me reading. I would like to take a moment to thank the members of this channel and invite you to consider becoming a member. You can also pick up Dragonlance gaming materials using my affiliate link. Both links are in the description below. I have never read this before. I've never read the basic rules. I've never read any of the 5th edition manuals. So this is 100% new to me. I assume it's going to be the exact same as every other Dragon or Dungeons and Dragons. Hey, Solid Crumbie, how you doing, man? Probably the same as every other one, so I don't see why this would be any different. But let's start from the beginning. Basic rules. This section contains the Dungeons & Dragons basic rules and the rules in the SRD released as part of the Open Gaming License. I don't even know what SRD is. Hey, Pat. Oh, I'm good, thank you. Introduction. The Dungeons & Dragons role-playing game is about storytelling in worlds of swords and sorcery. It shares elements with childhood games of make-believe. Like those games, Dungeons & Dragons is driven by imagination. It's about picturing the towering castle beneath the stormy night sky and imagining how a fantasy adventure might react to the challenges that scene presents. Dungeon Master, DM. After passing through the craggy peaks, the road takes a sudden turn to the east, and Castle Ravenloft towers before you. Crumbling towers of stone keep a silent watch over the approach. They look like abandoned guardhouses. Beyond these, a wide chasm gapes, disappearing into the deep fog below. A lowering drawbridge spans the chasm, leading to an arched entrance to the castle courtyard. The chains of the drawbridge creak in the wind, their rust-eaten iron straining with the weight. From atop the high-strung walls, stone gargoyles stare at you from hollow sockets and grin hideously. A rotten wooden portcullis, green with growth, hangs in the entry tunnel. Beyond this, the main doors of Castle Ravenloft stand open, a rich, warm light spilling into the courtyard. Philip, playing Gareth. I want to look at the gargoyles. I have a feeling they're not just statues. Amy, playing Riva. The drawbridge looks precarious. I wonder how sturdy it is. Do you think we can cross it, or is it going to collapse under our weight? Unlike a game of make-believe, Dungeons & Dragons gives strict structure to the stories, a way of determining the consequences of the adventurer's actions. Players roll dice to resolve whether their attacks hit or miss, or whether the adventurers can scale a cliff, roll away from the strike of a magical lightning bolt, or pull off some other dangerous task. Anything is possible, but the dice make some outcomes more probable than others. Dungeon Master. Okay, one at a time. Philip, you're looking at the gargoyles? Yeah. Is there any hint they might be creatures and not decorations? DM. Make an intelligence check. Philip. Does my investigation skill apply? DM. Sure. Philip. Rolling a d20. Ugh. 7. DM. They look like decorations to you. And Amy. Riva is checking out the drawbridge? In the Dungeons & Dragons game, each player creates an adventure, also called a character, and teams up with the other adventurers, played by friends. Working together, the group might explore a dark dungeon, a ruined city, a haunted castle, a lost temple deep in a jungle, or a lava-filled cavern beneath a mysterious mountain. The adventurers can solve puzzles, talk with other characters, battle fantastic monsters, and discover fabulous magic items and other treasure. One player, however, takes on the role of the Dungeon Master, DM, the game's lead storyteller and referee. The DM creates adventures for the characters who navigate its hazards and decide what paths to explore. The DM might describe the entrance to Castle Ravenloft, and the players decide what they want their adventurers to do. Will they walk across the dangerously weathered drawbridge, tie themselves together with rope to minimize the chance that someone will fall if the drawbridge gives way, or cast a spell to carry them over the chasm? Then the DM determines the results of the adventurer's actions and narrates what they experience. Because the DM can improvise to react to anything the players attempt, D&D is infinitely flexible, and each adventure can be exciting and unexpected. The game has no real end. When one story or quest wraps up, another one can begin, creating an ongoing story called a campaign. Many People who play the game keep their campaigns going for months or years, meeting with their friends every week or so to pick up the story where they left off. The adventurers grow in might as the campaign continues. Each monster defeated, each adventure completed, and each treasure recovered not only adds to the continuing story, but also earns the adventurers new capabilities. This increase in power is reflected by an adventure's level. There's no winning and losing in the Dungeons & Dragons game, at least not in the way those terms are usually understood. Together, the DM and the players create an exciting story of bold adventurers who confront deadly perils. Sometimes an adventure might come to a grisly end, torn apart by a ferocious monster or done in by a nefarious villain. Even so, the other adventurers can search for powerful magic to revive their fallen comrade, or the player might choose to create a new character to carry on. The group might fail to complete an adventure successfully, but if everyone had a good time and created a memorable story, they all win. Worlds of Adventure. The many worlds of the Dungeons & Dragons game are places of magic and monsters, of brave warriors and spectacular adventures. They begin with a foundation of medieval fantasy and then add the creatures, places, and magic that makes these worlds unique. The worlds of the Dungeons & Dragons game exist with a vast cosmos called the multiverse, connected in strange and mysterious ways to one another and to other planes of existence, such as the elemental plane of fire and the infinite depths of the abyss. Within this multiverse are endless variety of worlds. Many of them have been published as official settings for the D&D game. The Legends of the Forgotten Realms, Dragonlands, Greyhawk, Darksun, Mystara, and Eberron settings are woven together in the fabric of the multiverse. Alongside these worlds are hundreds of thousands more, created by generations of D&D players for their own games. And amid all the richness of the multiverse, you might create a world of your own. All these worlds share characteristics, but each world is set apart by its own history and cultures, distinctive monsters and races, fantastic geography, ancient dragons, and scheming villains. Some races have unusual traits in different worlds. The halflings of the Darksun setting, for example, are jungle-dwelling cannibals, and the elves are desert nomads. Some worlds feature races unknown in other settings, such as Eberron's Warforged, soldiers created and imbued with life to fight in the last war. Some worlds are dominated by one great story, like the War of the Lands. Yeah, that plays a central role in the DragonLance setting. But they're all D&D worlds, and you can use the rules here to create a character and play in any one of them. Your DM might set the campaign on one of these worlds or on one that he or she created. Because there's so much diversity among the worlds of D&D, you should check with your DM about any house rules that will affect your play of the game. Ultimately, the Dungeon Master is the authority on the campaign and its setting, even if the setting is a published world. Using these rules. The D&D Basic Rules document has 4 main parts. Part 1 is about creating a character, providing the rules and guidance you need to make the character you'll play in the game. It includes information on the various races, classes, backgrounds, equipment, and other customization options that you can choose from. Many of the rules in Part 1 rely on materials in Part 2 and 3. Part 2 details the rules of how to play the game, beyond the basics described in the introduction. That part covers the kind of die rolls you make to determine success or failure at the tasks your character attempts and describes the 3 broad categories of activity in the game: exploration, interaction, and combat. Part 3 is all about magic. It covers the nature of magic in the worlds of Dungeons & Dragons, the rules for spellcasting, and a selection of typical spells available to magic-using characters and monsters in the game. Part 4 is especially for the Dungeon Master. It contains instructions for how to challenge the player characters with adversaries that are a good test of their abilities, plus dozens of ready-to-use monster descriptions. It also provides a sampling of magic items that the character can earn as their rewards for vanquishing these monsters. The end of the document contains supplemental material. Appendix A collects all the definitions of conditions that can affect characters and monsters. Appendix B is a brief discussion of deities in the game, particular to those Forgotten Realms setting. Appendix C describes the 5 factions in the Forgotten Realms and the characters can become associated with. Appendix D explores the multitude of worlds and alternate dimensions of reality called the planes of existence. Finally, players can use the Character Builder, which provides a standardized way for players to create, record, and keep track of their characters' abilities and possessions. How to play. The play of the Dungeons & Dragons game unfolds according to this basic pattern. 1. The DM describes the environment. The DM tells the players where their adventures are and what's around them, presenting the basic scope of options that present themselves, how many doors lead out of a room, what's on a table, who's in a tavern, and so on. 2. The players describe what they want to do. Sometimes one player speaks for the whole party, saying, "We'll take the east door," for example. Other times, different adventurers do different things. One adventurer might search a treasure chest, with a second examining an esoteric symbol engraved on a wall, and a third keeps watch for monsters. The players don't need to take turns, but the DM listens to every player and decides how to resolve those actions. Sometimes resolving a task is easy. If an adventurer wants to walk across a room and open a door, the DM might just say that the door opens and describe what lies beyond. But the door might be locked. The floor might hide a deadly trap, or some other circumstance might make it challenging for an adventurer to complete a task. In those cases, the DM decides what happens, often relying on the roll of a die to determine the results of an action. The DM narrates the results of the adventurer's actions. 3. Describing the results often leads to another decision point, which brings the flow of the game right back to step 1. This pattern holds when the adventurers are cautiously exploring a ruin, talking to a devious prince, or locked in mortal combat against a mighty dragon. In certain situations, particularly combat, the action is more structured and the players and DM do take turns choosing and resolving actions. But most of the time, play is fluid and flexible, adapting to the circumstances of the adventure. Often the action of an adventure takes place in the imagination of the players and DM, relying on the DM's verbal description to set the scene. Some DMs like to use music, art, or recorded sound effects to help set the mood. And many players and DMs alike adopt different voices for various adventurers, monsters, and other characters they play in the game. Sometimes a DM might lay out a map and use tokens for mini or miniature figures to represent each creature involved in a scene to help the players keep track of where everyone is. Game dice. The game uses polyhedral dice with different numbers of sides. You can find dice like these in game stores and in many bookstores. In these rules, the different dice are referred to by the letter D, followed by the number of sides: D4, D6, D8, D10, D12, and D20. For instance, a D6 is a 6-sided die, a typical cube that many games use. Percentile dice, or D100, work a little differently. You generate a number between 1 and 100 by rolling 2 different 10-sided dice numbered from 0 to 9. One die, designated before you roll, gives the tens digit, and the other gives the ones digit. If you roll a 7 and a 1, for example, the number rolled is 71. 2 zeros represent 100. Some 10-sided dice are numbered in tens, 0, 0, 10, 20, and so on, making it easier to distinguish the tens digit from the ones digit. In this case, a roll of 70 and 1 is 71, and 0, 0, and 0 is 100. When you need to roll the dice, the rules tell you how many dice to roll of a certain type, as well as what modifiers to add. For example, 3d8 plus 5 means you roll 3 8-sided dice, add them together, and add 5 to the total. The same denotation appears in the expressions 1d3 and 1d2. To simulate the roll of 1d3, roll a d6 and divide the number by 2, rounded up. To simulate the roll of 1d2, roll any die and assign 1 or 2 to the roll depending on whether it was odd or even. Alternatively, if the number rolled is more than half the number of sides on the die, it's a 2. The D20. Does an adventurer's sword swing hurt a dragon or just bounce off its iron-hard scales? Will the ogre believe an outrageous bluff? Can a character swim across a raging river? Can a character avoid the main blast of a fireball, or does he or she take full damage from the blaze? In cases where the outcome of an action is uncertain, the Dungeons & Dragons game relies on the roll of a 20-sided die, a d20, to determine success or failure. Each character and monster in the game has capabilities defined by 6 ability scores. The abilities are Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. I guess they dropped Comeliness a long time ago. And they typically range from 3 to 18 for most adventurers. Monsters must have scores as low as 1 or as high as 30. These ability scores and the ability modifiers derived from them are the basis for almost every d20 roll that a player makes on a character or monster's behalf. Ability checks, attack rolls, and saving throws are the three main kinds of D20 rolls, forming the core of the rules to the game. All three follow these simple steps. 1. Roll the die and add a modifier. Roll a d20 and add the relevant modifier. This is typically the modifier derived from one of the 6 ability scores, and it sometimes includes a proficiency bonus to reflect a character's particular skill. See Chapter 1 for details on each ability and how to determine an ability's modifier. 2. Apply circumstantial bonuses and penalties. A class feature, a spell, a particular circumstance, or some other effect might give a bonus or penalty to the check. 3. Compare the total to a target number. If the total equals or exceeds the target number, the ability check, attack roll, or saving throw is a success. Otherwise, it's a failure. The DM is usually the one who determines target numbers and tells players whether their ability checks, attack rolls, and saving throws succeed or fail. The target number for an ability check or a saving throw is called a difficulty class, DC. The target number for an attack roll is called an armor class, AC. AC/DC is an 80s, 90s, and arguably 2000s rock band. This simple rule governs the resolution of most tasks in D&D play. Chapter 7 provides more detailed rules for using the D20 in the game. Advantage and disadvantage. Sometimes an ability check, attack roll, or saving throw is modified by special situations called advantage and disadvantage. Advantage reflects the positive circumstances surrounding a d20 roll, while disadvantage reflects the opposite. When you have either advantage or disadvantage, you roll a second d20 when you make the roll. Use the higher of the two rolls if you have advantage, and use the lower roll if you have a disadvantage. For example, if you have disadvantage and roll a 17 and a 5, you use the 5. If you instead have an advantage and roll those numbers, you use the 17. More detailed rules for advantages and disadvantages are presented in Chapter 7. Specific beats general. This book contains rules, especially in parts 2 and 3, that govern how the game plays. That said, many racial traits, class features, spells, magic items, monster abilities, and other game elements break the general rule in some way, creating an exception to how the rest of the game works. Remember this: if a specific rule contradicts a general rule, the specific rule wins. Exceptions to the rules are often minor. For instance, many adventurers don't have proficiency with longbows, but every wood elf does because of a racial trait. That trait gives a minor exception in the game. Other examples of rule breaking are more conspicuous. For instance, an adventurer can't normally pass through walls, but some spells make that possible. Magic accounts for most of the major exceptions to the rules. Round down. There's one more general rule you need to know at the outset. Whenever you divide a number in the game, round down if you end up with a fraction, even if the fraction is 1/2 or greater. Adventures. The Dungeons & Dragons game consists of a group of characters embarking on an adventure that the Dungeon Master presents to them. Each character brings particular capabilities to the adventure in the form of ability scores and skills, class features, racial traits, equipment, and magic items. Every character is different, with various strengths and weaknesses, so the best party of adventures is one in which characters complement each other and cover the weaknesses of their companions. The adventurers must cooperate to successfully complete the adventure. Thank you, Adam. I appreciate that. And yeah, I know the D&D 1 is going to be dropping, and the new DragonLance one is going to be dropping this December, but the new DragonLance is not going to be associated with the 1 D&D rules as of yet, so hopefully this is going to be accurate. The adventure is the heart of the game, a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. An adventure might be created by the Dungeon Master or purchased off the shelf, tweaked and modified to suit the DM's needs and desires. In either case, an adventure features a fantastic setting, whether it's an underground dungeon, a crumbling castle, a stretch of wilderness, or a bustling city. It features a rich cast of characters. The adventure is created and played by the other players at the table, as well as non-playing characters, NPCs. Those characters might be patrons, allies, enemies, hirelings, or just background extras in an adventure. Often, one of the NPCs is a villain whose agenda drives much of an adventurer's action. Over the course of their adventures, the characters are confronted by a variety of creatures, objects, and situations that must deal with in some way. Sometimes the adventurers and other creatures do their best to kill or capture each other in combat. At other times, the adventurers talk to another creature, or even a magical object, with a goal in mind. And often, the adventurers spend time trying to solve a puzzle, bypass an obstacle, find something hidden, or unravel the current situation. Meanwhile, the adventurers explore the world, make decisions about which way to travel and what they'll do next. Adventures vary in length and complexity. A short adventure might present only a few challenges, and it might take no more than a single game session to complete. A long adventure can involve hundreds of combatants, interactions, and other challenges, and take dozens of sessions to play through, stretching over weeks or months of real time. Usually, the end of an adventure is marked by the adventurers heading back to civilization to rest and enjoying the spoils of their labors. But that's not the end of the story. You can think of an adventure as a single episode of a TV series made up of multiple exciting scenes. A campaign is the whole series, a string of adventures joined together with a consistent group of adventures following the narrative from the start to finish. 3 pillars of adventure. Adventurers can try to do anything their players can imagine, but it can be helpful to talk about their activities in 3 broad categories: exploration, social interaction, and combat. Exploration includes both the adventurers' movements through the world and their interaction with objects and situations that require their attention. Exploration is the give and take of the players describing what they want their characters to do, and the dungeon master telling the players what happens as a result. On a large scale, that might involve the characters spending a day crossing a rolling plain or an hour making their way through the caverns underground. On the smallest scale, it could mean one character pulling a lever in a dungeon room to see what happens. Social interaction features the adventurers talking to someone or something else. It might mean demanding that a captured scout reveal the secret entrance to the goblin lair, getting information from a rescued prisoner, pleading for mercy from an orc chieftain, or persuading a talkative magic mirror to show a distant location to the adventurers. The rules in Chapters 7 and 8 support exploration and social action, as do many class features in Chapter 3 and personality traits in Chapter 4. Combat. The focus of Chapter 9 involves characters and other creatures swinging weapons, casting spells, maneuvering for position, and so on, all in an effort to defeat their opponents, whether that means killing every enemy, taking captives, or forcing a rout. Combat is the most structured element of a D&D session, with creatures taking turns to make sure that everyone gets a chance to act. Even in the context of a pitched battle, there's still plenty of opportunity for adventurers to attempt wacky stunts like surfing down a flight of stairs on a shield to examine the environment, perhaps by pulling a mysterious lever, and to interact with other creatures, including allies, enemies, and neutral parties. The wonders of magic. Few D&D adventures end without something magical happening. Whether helpful or harmful, magic appears frequently in the life of an adventure, and it is the focus of Chapters 10 and 11. In the worlds of Dungeons and Dragons, practitioners of magic are rare, set apart from the masses of people by their extraordinary talent. Common folk might see evidence of magic on a regular basis, but it's usually minor. A fantastic monster, a visibly answered prayer, a wizard walking through the streets with an animated shield guardian as a bodyguard. For adventurers, though, magic is key to their survival. Without the healing magic of clerics and paladins, adventurers would quickly succumb to their wounds. Without the uplifting magical support of bards and clerics, warriors might be overwhelmed by powerful foes. Without the sheer magical power and versatility of wizards and druids, every threat would be magnified tenfold. Magic is also a favored tool of villains. Many adventurers are driven by the machinations of spellcasters who are hell-bent on using magic for some ill end. A cult leader seeks to awaken a god who slumbers beneath the sea. A hag kidnaps youths to magically drain them of their vigor. A mad wizard labors to invest an army of automatons with the facsimile of life. A dragon begins a mystical ritual to rise up as a god of destruction. These are just a few of the magical threats that adventurers might face. With the magic of their own, in the form of spells and magic items, the adventurers might prevail. All right. Let's go to Chapter 1. Creating a character. Hey, Chris, how you doing? All right. Step-by-step characters. Chapter 1. You first step in playing Your first step in playing an adventure in the Dungeons& & Dragons game is to imagine and create a character of your own. Your character is a combination of game statistics, role-playing hooks, and your imagination. You choose a race, such as a human or halfling, and a class, such as a fighter or wizard. You also invent the personality, appearance, and backstory of your character. Once completed, your character serves as your representative in the game, your avatar in the Dungeons & Dragons world. Before you dive into step 1 below, think about the kind of adventure you want to play. You might be a courageous fighter, a skulking rogue, a fervent cleric, or a flamboyant wizard. Or you might be more interested in an unconventional character, such as a brawny rogue who likes hand-to-hand combat, or a sharpshooter who picks off enemies from afar. Do you like fantasy fiction featuring dwarves or elves? Try building a character with one of those races. Do you want your character to be the toughest adventurer at the table? Consider a fighter class. If you don't know where else to begin, take a look at the illustrations in any Dungeons & Dragons book to see what catches your interest. Once you have a character in mind, follow these steps in order, making decisions that reflect the character you want. Your conception of your character might evolve with each choice you make. What's important is that you come to the table with the character you're excited to play. Throughout this section, we use the term character sheet to mean whatever you use to track your character, whether it's a formal character sheet, like the one at the end of these rules, or some form of digital record or a piece of notebook paper. An official D&D character sheet is a fine place to start until you know what information you need and how you use it during the game. Building Bruenor. Each step of character creation includes an example of that step, with a player named Bob building his dwarf character, Bruenor. 1. Choose a race. Every character belongs to a race, one of the many intelligent humanoid species in the D&D world. The most common player character races are dwarves, elves, halflings, and humans. Some races also have sub-races, such as mountain dwarf or wood elf. The races section provides more information about races. The race you choose contributes to your character's identity in an important way by establishing a general appearance and the natural talents gained from culture and ancestry. Your character's race grants particular racial traits, such as special senses, proficiency with certain weapons or tools, proficiency in one or more skills, or the ability to use minor spells. These traits sometimes dovetail with the capabilities of certain classes. See step 2. For example, the racial traits of Lightfoot halflings make them exceptional rogues, and high elves tend to be powerful wizards. Sometimes playing against type can be fun too. Halfling paladins and mountain dwarf wizards, for example, can be unusual but memorable characters. Your race also increases one or more of your ability scores, which you determine in step 3. Note these increases and remember to apply them later. Record the traits granted by your race on your character sheet. Be sure to note your starting languages and your base speed as well. Building Bruenor, step 1. Bob is sitting down to create his character. He decides that a gruff mountain dwarf fits the character he wants to play. He notes all the racial traits of dwarves on his character sheet, including his speed of 25 feet and the languages he knows, Common and Dwarvish. 2. Choose a class. Every adventure is a member of a class. Class broadly describes a character's vocation, what special talent he or she possesses, and the tactics he or she is most likely to employ when exploring a dungeon, fighting monsters, or engaging in intense negotiation. The character classes are described in the Classes section. Your character receives a number of benefits from your choice of class. Many of these benefits are class features, capabilities including spellcasting, that set your character apart from members of other classes. You also gain a number of proficiencies: armor, weapons, skills, saving throws, and sometimes tools. Your proficiencies define many of the things your character can do particularly well, from using certain weapons to telling a convincing lie. On your character sheet, record all the features that your class gives you at first level. Level. Typically, a character starts at first level and advances in level by adventuring and gaining experience points, XP. A first-level character is inexperienced in the adventuring world, although he or she might have been a soldier or a pirate and done dangerous things before. Starting off at first level marks your character's entry into adventuring life. If you're already familiar with the game, or if you're joining an existing D&D campaign, your DM might decide you have to have you begin at higher level on the assumption that your character has already survived a few harrowing adventures. Record your level on your character sheet. If you're starting at higher level, record the additional elements your class gives you for your levels passed first. Also record your experience points. At first level, characters have 0 XP. A higher level character typically begins with the minimum amount of XP required to reach that level. See Beyond First Level later in this section. Quick build. Each class description in the class section includes a section offering suggestions to quick build a character of that class, including how to assign your highest ability scores, a background suitable to the class, and starting spells. Hit points and hit dice. Your character's hit points define how tough your character is in combat and other dangerous situations. Your hit points are determined by your hit dice, short for hit point dice. At first level, your character has 1 hit die, and the die type is determined by your class. You start with hit points equal to the highest roll of that die, as indicated in your class description. You also add your Constitution modifier, which you'll determine in Step 3. This is also your hit point maximum. Record your character's hit points on your character sheet. Also record the type of hit die your character uses and the number of hit dice you have. After you rest, you can spend hit dice to regain hit points. See Resting in the Adventuring section. Proficiency bonus. The table that appears in your class descriptions shows your proficiency bonus, which is +2 for a first level character. Your proficiency bonus applies to many of the numbers you'll be recording on your character sheet. Attack rolls using weapons you're proficient with, attack rolls with spells you cast, ability checks using skills you're proficient in, ability checks using tools you're proficient with, saving throws you're proficient in, saving throw DCs for spells you cast, explained in each spellcasting class. Your class determines your weapon proficiencies, your saving throw proficiencies, and some of your skill and tool proficiencies. Skills are described in using ability scores, tools in equipment. Your background gives you additional skill and tool proficiencies, and some races give you more proficiencies. Be sure to note all of these proficiencies as well as your proficiency bonus on your character sheet. Your proficiency bonus can't be added to a single die roll or other number more than once. Occasionally, your proficiency bonus might be modified, doubled or halved, for example, before you apply it. If a circumstance suggests that your proficiency bonus applies more than once to the same roll or that it should be multiplied more than once, you nevertheless add it only once, multiply it only once, and halve it only once. Building Brenner Step 2. Bob imagines Brunner charging into battle with an axe, one horn on his helmet broken off. He makes Brunner a fighter and notes the fighter's proficiencies and first-level class features on his character sheet. As a first-level fighter, Brunner has 1 hit dice, a d10, and starts with hit points equal to 10 plus his Constitution modifier. Bob notes this and will record the final number after he determines Brunner's Constitution score. See Step 3. Bob also notes the proficiency bonus for a first-level character, which is +2. Determine ability scores. Much of what your character does in the game depends on his or her 6 abilities: Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. Each ability has a score, which is a number you record on your character sheet. The 6 abilities and their use in the game are described in the Using Ability Scores section. The Ability Score Summary table provides a quick reference for what qualifies as measured by, The Ability Score Summary table provides a quick reference for what qualities are measured by each ability, what races increase with abilities, and what classes consider each ability particularly important. You generate your character's 6 ability scores randomly. Roll 4 6-sided dice and record the total of the highest 3 dice on a piece of scratch paper. Do this 5 more times so that you have 6 numbers. If you want to save time or don't like the idea of randomly determining ability scores, you can use the following scores instead: 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, and 8. Now take your 6 numbers and write each number beside one of your character's 6 abilities to assign scores to Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. Afterward, make any changes to your ability scores as a result of your race choice. Hey Joshua, thanks for joining live. After assigning your ability scores, determine your ability modifiers using the Ability Scores and Modifiers table. To determine an ability modifier without consulting the table, subtract 10 from the ability score and then divide the result by 2, round down. Write the modifier next to each of your scores. Hey Apocalypse, thanks for joining live. Building Bruner Step 3. Bob decides to use the standard set of scores, 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, and 8, for Bruner's abilities. Since he's a fighter, he puts his highest score, 15, in Strength. His next highest, 14, goes in Constitution. Bruner might be a brash fighter, but Bob decides he wants the dwarf to be older, wiser, and a good leader, so he puts decent scores in Wisdom and Charisma. After applying his racial benefits, increasing Bruner's Constitution by 2 and his Strength by 2, Bruner's ability scores and modifiers look like this. Strength 17 plus 3, Dexterity plus 10 plus, Dexterity 10 plus 0, Constitution 16 plus 3, Intelligence 8 minus 1, Wisdom 13 plus 1, Charisma 12 plus 1. Bob fills in Bruner's final hit points, 10 plus his Constitution modifier of plus 3, for a total of 13 hit points. Variant, customizing ability scores. At your Dungeon Master's option, you can use this variant for determining your ability scores. The method described here allows you to build a character with a set of ability scores you choose individually. You have 27 points to spend on your ability scores. The cost of each score is shown on the ability score point cost table. For example, a score of 14 costs 7 points. Using this method, 15 is the highest ability score you can end up with before applying racial increases. You can't have a score lower than 8. This method of determining ability scores enables you to create a set of 3 high numbers and 3 low ones, 15, 15, 15, 8, 8, 8, as a set of numbers that are above average and nearly equal, 13, 13, 13, 12, 12, 12, or any set of numbers between those extremes. And you can see the ability score point cost in this chart right here. So ability score summary. Strength measures natural athleticism, bodily power. It's important for barbarian, fighter, and paladin. Racial increases, mountain dwarf plus 2, dragonborn plus 2, half-orc plus 2, human plus 1. Dexterity measures physical agility, reflexes, balance, poise. Important for monk, ranger, rogue. Racial increases, elf plus 2, halfling plus 2, forest gnome plus 1, human plus 1. Constitution measures health, stamina, vital force. Important for everyone. Dwarf plus 2, stout halfling plus 1, rock gnome plus 1, half-orc plus 1, human plus 1. Intelligence measures mental acuity, information recall, analytical skill. Important for wizard. Racial increases, half-elf plus 1, gnome plus 2. That was high elf plus 1. Gnome plus 2, tiefling plus 1, human plus 1. Wisdom measures awareness, intuition, insight. Important for cleric, druid. Racial increases, hill dwarf plus 1, wood elf plus 1, human plus 1. And charisma, confidence, eloquence, leadership. Important for bard, sorcerer, warlock. Racial increases, half elf plus 2, drow plus 1, lightfoot halfling plus 1, dragonborn plus 1, tiefling plus 2, human plus 1. And you can see the ability scores and modifiers chart right here. Describe your character. Once you know the basic game aspects of your character, it's time to flesh him or her out as a person. Your character needs a name. Spend a few moments thinking about what he or she looks like and how he or she behaves in general terms. Using the information in the personality and background section, you can flesh out your character's physical appearance and personality traits. Choose your character's alignment, the moral compass that guides his or her decisions, and ideals. A personality and background section also helps you identify the things your character holds most dear, called bonds, and the flaws that could one day undermine him or her. Your character's background describes what he or she came from, his or her original occupation, and the character's place in the D&D world. Your DM might offer additional backgrounds beyond the ones included in the personality and background section, and might be willing to work with you to craft a background that's a more precise fit for your character concept. A background gives your character a background feature, a general benefit, and proficiency in 2 skills. And it might also give you additional languages or proficiency with certain kinds of tools. Record this information along with the personality information you develop on your character sheet. Your character's abilities. Take your character's ability scores and race into account as you flesh out his or her appearance and personality. A very strong character with low intelligence might think and behave very differently from a very smart character with low strength. For example, high strength usually corresponds with a burly or athletic body, while a character with low strength might be scrawny or plump. A character with high dexterity is probably lithe and slim, while a character with low dexterity might be either gangly and awkward or heavy and thick-fingered. A character with high intelligence might be highly inquisitive and studious, while a character with low intelligence might speak simply or easily forget details. A character with high wisdom has good judgment, empathy, and a general awareness of what's going on. A character with low wisdom might be absent-minded, foolhardy, or oblivious. A character with high charisma exudes confidence, which is usually mixed with a graceful or intimidating presence. A character with a low charisma might come across as abrasive, inarticulate, or timid. Building Bruner, Step 4. Bob fills in some of Bruner's basic details: his name, his sex, male, his height and weight, and his alignment, lawful good. His high strength and constitution select a healthy athletic body, and his low intelligence suggests a degree of forgetfulness. Bob decides that Bruner comes from a noble line, but his clan was expelled from its homeland when Bruner was very young. He grew up working as a smith in the remote villages of Icewind Dale, but Bruner has a heroic destiny to reclaim his homeland, so Bob chooses the folk hero background for his dwarf. He notes the proficiencies and special features this background gives him. Bob has a pretty clear picture of Bruner's personality in mind, so he skips the personality traits suggested in the folk hero background, noting instead that Bruner is a caring, sensitive dwarf who genuinely loves his friends and allies, but he hides this soft heart behind a gruff, snarling demeanor. He chooses the ideal of fairness from the list in his background, noting that Bruner believes that no one is above the law. Given his history, Bruner's bond is obvious. He aspires to someday reclaim Mithril Hall, his homeland, from the shadow dragon that drove the dwarves out. His flaw is tied to his caring, sensitive nature. He has a soft spot for orphans and wayward souls, leading him to show mercy even when it might not be warranted. 5. Choosing equipment. Your class and background determine your character's starting equipment, including weapons, armor, and other adventuring gear. Record this equipment on your character sheet. All such items are detailed in the equipment section. Instead of taking the gear given to you by your class and background, you can purchase your starting equipment. You have a number of gold pieces, GP, to spend based on your class, as shown in the equipment section. Extensive lists of equipment with prices also appear in that section. If you wish, you can have one trinket at no cost. See the trinkets table at the end of the equipment section. Your strength score limits the amount of gear you can carry. Try not to purchase equipment with a total weight in pounds exceeding your strength score times 15. Using ability scores has more information on carrying capacity. Armor class. Your armor class, AC, represents how well your character avoids being wounded in battle. Things that contribute to your armor class include the armor you wear, the shield you carry, and your dexterity modifier. Not all characters wear armor or carry shields, however. Without armor or a shield, your character's AC equals 10 plus his or her dexterity modifier. If your character wears armor, carries a shield, or both, calculate your AC using the rules in the equipment section. Record your AC on your character sheet. Your character needs to be proficient with armor and shields to wear and use them effectively, and your armor and shield proficiencies are determined by your class. There are drawbacks to wearing armor or carrying a shield if you lack the required proficiency, as explained in the equipment section. Some spells and class features give you a different way to calculate your AC. If you have multiple features that give you different ways to calculate your AC, you choose which one to use. Weapons. For each weapon your character wields, calculate the modifier you use when you attack with the weapon and the damage you dealt when you hit. When you make an attack with your weapon, you roll a d20 and add your proficiency bonus, but only if you are proficient with the weapon and the appropriate ability modifier. For attacks with melee weapons, use your strength modifier for attack and damage rolls. A weapon that has finesse properties, such as a rapier, can use your dexterity modifier instead. For attacks with ranged weapons, use your dexterity modifier for attack and damage rolls. A melee weapon that has a thrown property, such as a hand axe, can use your strength modifier instead. Building Bruner, Step 5. Bob writes down the starting equipment from the fighter class and the folk hero background. His starting equipment includes chainmail and a shield, which when combined to give Bruner an armor class of 18. For Bruner's weapons, Bob chooses a battle axe and 2 hand axes. His battle axe is a melee weapon, so Bruner uses a strength modifier for his attacks and damage. His attack bonus is his strength modifier plus 3, plus his proficiency bonus plus 2, for a total of plus 5. The battle axe deals 1d8 slashing damage, and Bruner adds his strength modifier to the damage when he hits, for a total of 1d8 plus 3 slashing damage. When throwing a hand axe, Bruner has the same attack bonus. Hand axes, as thrown weapons, use strength for attacks and damage, and the weapon deals 1d6 plus 3 slashing damage when it hits. 6. Come together. Most D&D characters don't work alone. Each character plays a role within a party, a group of adventurers working together for a common purpose. Teamwork and cooperation greatly improve your party's chances to survive the many perils in the worlds of Dungeons & Dragons. Talk to your fellow players and your DM to decide whether your characters know one another, how they met, and what sort of quests the group might undertake. Beyond first level. As your character goes on adventures and overcomes challenges, he or she gains experience, represented by experience points. A character who reaches a specified experience point total advances in capability. This advancement is called gaining a level. Class features and hit dice. When your character gains a level, his or her class often grants additional features as detailed in the class description. Some of these features allow you to increase your ability scores, either increasing 2 scores by 1 each or increasing 1 score by 2. You can't increase an ability score above 20. In addition, every character's proficiency bonus increases at certain levels. I didn't know that. That's crazy. So you're just continually getting better at everything, every level? Huh. Each time you gain a level, you gain 1 additional hit die. Roll that hit die, add your Constitution modifier to the roll, and add the total minimum of 1 to your hit point maximum. Alternatively, you can use the fixed value shown in your class entry, which is the average result of the die roll rounded up. When your Constitution modifier increased by 1, your hit point maximum increases by 1 for each level you have attained. For example, if your 7th level fighter has a Constitution score of 17, when he reaches 8th level, he increases his Constitution score from 17 to 18, thus increasing his Constitution modifier from +2 to +3. His hit point maximum then increases by 8. XP and proficiency bonus progression. A character advancement table summarizes the XP you need to advance in levels from level 1 through level 20, and the proficiency bonus for a character of that level. Consult the information in your character's class description to see what other improvements you gain at each level. Tiers of play. The shading in the character advancement table shows the 4 tiers of play. The tiers don't have any rules associated with them, they're just a general description of how the play experience changes as characters gain levels. In the first tier, levels 1 to 4, characters are effectively apprentice adventurers. They're learning the features that define them as members of a particular class, including the major choices that flavor their class features as they advance, such as a wizard's arcane tradition or a fighter's martial archetype. The threats they face are relatively minor, usually posing a danger to local farmsteads or villages. In the second tier, levels 5 to 10, characters come into their own. Many spellcasters gain access to 3rd level spells at the start of this tier, crossing a new threshold of magical power with spells such as Fireball and Lightning Bolt. At this tier, many weapon-using classes gain the ability to make multiple attacks in one round. These characters have become important, facing dangers that threaten cities and kingdoms. In the third tier, levels 11 to 16, characters have reached a level of power that sets them high above the ordinary populace and makes them special even among adventurers. At 11th level, many spellcasters gain access to 6th level spells, some of which create effects previously impossible for player characters to achieve. Other characters gain features that allow them to make more attacks or do more impressive things with those attacks. These mighty adventurers often confront threats to whole regions and continents. At 4th tier, levels 17 to 20, characters achieve the pinnacle of their class features, becoming heroic or villainous archetypes in their own right. The fate of the world, or even the fundamental order of the multiverse, might hang in the balance during these adventures. Character advancement. So everyone has the same character class experience opponent? Okay. I'm used to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons more than anything else, and so this is very different to me. I always thought different classes had their own different advancement levels because some classes are inherently more powerful than others, and so you have to sort of tamp them down in order to even it out. Oh, and that's it for this chapter. Chapter 2, Races. A visit to one of the great cities in the worlds of Dungeons & Dragons, Waterdeep, the Free City of Greyhawk, or even Uncanny Sigil, the City of Doors, overwhelms the senses. Voices chatter in countless different languages. The smells of cooking in dozens of different cuisines mingle with the odors of crowded streets and poor sanitation. They had to add that last bit in, just for color. Poor sanitation. You know what that means? That means shit running down the side of the street. That's what that means. Buildings in myriad architectural styles display the diverse origins of their inhabitants. And the people themselves, people of varying size, shape, and color, dressed in a dazzling spectrum of styles and hues, represent many different races, from diminutive halflings and stout dwarves to majestically beautiful elves, mingling among a variety of human ethnicities. Scattered among these common peoples are less numerous folk, a hulking dragonborn here pushing his way through the crowd, and a sly tiefling there, lurking in the shadows with mischief in her eyes. A group of gnomes laugh as one of them activates a clever wooden toy that moves of its own accord. Hopefully it is not the lament configuration. Half-elves and half-orcs live and work alongside humans without fully belonging to the races of either of their parents. And there, well, out of the sunlight, is a lone drow, fugitive from the subterranean expanse of the Underdark, trying to make his way in a world that fears his kind. Choosing a race. Humans are the most common people in the worlds of D&D. But you would never know it if you've ever played D&D. But they live and work alongside dwarves, elves, halflings, and countless other fantastic species. Your character belongs to one of these peoples. Not every intelligent race of the multiverse is appropriate for a player-controlled adventurer. Dwarves, elves, halflings, and humans are the most common races to produce the sort of adventurers who make up typical parties. Dragonborn, gnomes, half-elves, half-orcs, and tieflings are less common as adventurers. Drow, a subrace of elves, are also uncommon. Your choice of race affects many different aspects of your character. It establishes fundamental qualities that exist throughout your character's adventuring career. When making this decision, keep in mind the kind of character you want to play. For example, a halfling could be a good choice for a sneaky rogue, a dwarf makes a tough warrior, and an elf can be a master of arcane magic. Your character race not only affects your ability scores and traits, but also provides the cues for building your character's story. Each race's description in this section includes information to help you roleplay a character of that race, including personality, physical appearance, and features of society. These details are suggestions to help you think about your character. Adventurers can deviate wildly from the norm of their race. It's worthwhile to consider why your character is different, as a helpful way to think about your character's background and personality. Racial traits. The description of each race includes racial traits that are common to members of that race. The following entries appear among the traits of most races. Ability score increase. A race that has this trait increases one or more of the character's ability scores. Age. The age entry notes the age when a member of the race is considered an adult, as well as the race's expected lifespan. This information can help you decide how old your character is at the start of the game. You can choose any age for your character, which could provide an explanation for some of your ability scores. For example, if you play a young or very old character, your age could explain a particularly low strength or constitution score, while advanced age could account for a high intelligence or wisdom. Size. Characters of most races are medium, size category that include that creatures are roughly 4 to 8 feet tall. Members of a few races are small, between 2 and 4 feet tall, which means that certain rules of the game affect them differently. The most important of these rules is that small characters have trouble wielding heavy weapons, as explained in the equipment section. Speed. Your speed determines how far you can move when traveling, adventuring, and fighting combat. Languages. Your character can speak, read, and write certain languages. Personality and background lists the most common languages of the D&D multiverse. I assume they don't have alignment languages since that went out with 2nd edition. Subraces. Some races have subraces. Members of a subrace have the traits of the parent race in addition to the traits specified for their subrace. Relationships among subraces vary significantly from race to race and world to world. In the Dragonlance campaign setting, for example, mountain dwarves and hill dwarves live together as different clans of the same people. Do they? Is that when they've slammed the doors closed on Thorbarton? But in the Forgotten Realms, they live far apart in separate kingdoms and call themselves shield dwarves and gold dwarves, respectively. Dwarf. "You're late, Ilf," came the rough edge of a familiar voice. Bruner Battlehammer walked up to the back of his dead foe, disregarding the fact that the heavy monster lay on top of his elven friend. In spite of the added discomfort, the dwarf's long-pointed, often broken nose and gray streaked through still fiery red beard came as a welcome sight to Drizzt. "Knew I'd find you in trouble if I came a-looking around for you." I butchered that reading, sorry. R.A. Salvatore, Crystal Shard. Kingdoms rich in ancient grandeur, halls carved in the roots of mountains, the echoing of picks and hammers in deep mines and blazing forges, a commitment to clan and tradition, and a burning hatred of goblins and orcs. These common threads unite all dwarves. Short and stout. He's a little teapot. Bold and hardy, dwarves are known as skilled warriors, miners, and workers of stone and metal. Though they stand well under 5 feet tall, dwarves are so broad and compact that they can weigh as much as a human standing nearly 2 feet taller. Their courage and endurance are also easily a match for any of the larger folk. Dwarven skin ranges from deep brown to a paler hue tinged with red, but the most common shades are light brown or deep tan, like certain tones of earth. Their hair, worn long but in simple styles, is usually black, gray, or brown, though paler dwarves often have red hair. Male dwarves value their beards highly and groom them carefully. Long memory, long grudges. Dwarves can live to be more than 400 years old, so the oldest living dwarves often remember a very different world. For examples, some of the oldest dwarves living in Citadel Felbar in the world of the Forgotten Realms can recall the day more than 3 centuries ago when orcs conquered the fortress and drove them into an exile that lasted over 250 years. Do you think that's why they remember, though? Not because they have good memories, but because they are like scarred emotionally about being thrown out. This longevity grants them a perspective in the world that a shorter lived race such as human and halflings lack. Dwarves are solid and enduring like the mountains they love, weathering the passage of centuries with stoic endurance and little change. They respect the tradition of their clans, tracing their ancestry back to the founding of the most ancient strongholds in the youth of the world, and don't abandon those traditions lightly. Part of those traditions is devotion to the gods of the dwarves, who uphold the dwarven ideals of industrious labor, skill in battle, and devotion to the forge. Individual dwarves are determined and loyal, true to their word and decisive in action, sometimes to a point of stubbornness. Many dwarves have a strong sense of justice, and they're slow to forget wrongs they've suffered. A wrong done to a dwarf is a wrong done to the dwarf's entire clan. So what begins as one dwarf's hunt for vengeance can become a full-blown clan feud. Clans and kingdom. You know what, before I get to this, when I was in, after basic training in the Army, you go into advanced individual training, AIT. When I was in AIT, one of the instructors is a really cool black guy. I have a tattoo on my arm of my Scottish clan. He asked me what the tattoo was. I said, oh, it's of my clan. He's like, wait, what? I said, yeah, the tattoo's of my clan. He's like, we don't like your kind here in the army. And I was like, you don't like Scottish people? What are you talking about? He put me in leaning rest, which is basically a push-up position, push off the ground, until he could go talk to an admin. The admin came to talk to me saying, so I heard you're in the clan. I was like, the clan? No, no, no. I'm Scottish. That is my family crest, my clan crest. I'm not KKK. And they're like, oh, well, why didn't you say that? I was like, I did say that. Yeah, it was pretty miserable. All right. Clans and kingdoms. Dwarven kingdoms stretch deep beneath the mountains where the dwarves mine gems and precious metals and forge items of wonder. They love the beauty and artistry of precious metals and fine jewelry, and in some dwarves, this love festers to avarice. Whatever wealth they can't find in the mountains, they gain through trade. They dislike boats, so enterprising humans and halflings frequently handle trade in dwarven goods along water routes. Trustworthy members of other races are welcome in dwarven settlements, though some are off limits even to them. The chief unit of dwarven society is the clan, and dwarves highly value social standing. Even dwarves who live far from their own kingdoms cherish their clan identities and affiliations, recognize related dwarves, and invoke their ancestors' names in oaths and curses. To be clanless is the worst fate that can befall a dwarf. Dwarves in other lands are typically artisans, especially weaponsmiths, armorers, and jewelers. Some become mercenaries or bodyguards, highly sought after for their courage and loyalty. Oh, thanks for that, Apocalypse. I really appreciate that. Yeah, man, this is the best setting, full stop. It's so great. I can't wait to try it in this edition. I've played it in literally every other edition, so I got to give this one a shot too. Gods, gold, and clan. Dwarves who take up adventuring life might be motivated by a desire for treasure, for its own sake, for a specific purpose, or even out of an altruistic desire to help others. Other dwarves are driven by the command or inspiration of a deity, a direct calling, or simply a desire to bring glory to one of the dwarf gods. Clan and ancestry are also important motivators. A dwarf might seek to restore a clan's lost honor, avenge an ancient wrong the clan suffered, or earn a new place in the clan after having been exiled. Or a dwarf might search for the axe wielded by a mighty ancestor lost on the field of battle centuries ago. Slow to trust. Dwarves get along passably well with most other races. The difference between an acquaintance and a friend is about 100 years, is a dwarf saying that might be hyperbole, but certainly points to how difficult it can be for a member of a short-lived race like humans to earn a dwarf's trust. Elves. It's not wise to depend on elves, no matter what an elf will do next. No telling what an elf will do next. When the hammer meets the orc's head, they're as apt to start singing as to pull out a sword. They're flighty and frivolous. Two things to be said for them, though. They don't have many smiths, but the ones they do have do very fine work. And when orcs or goblins come streaming down out of the mountains, an elf's good to have at your back. Not as good as a dwarf, maybe, but no doubt they hate the orcs as much as we do. Halflings. Sure, they're pleasant folk, but show me a halfling hero, an empire, a triumphant army, even a treasury for the ages made by halfling hands. Nothing. How can you take them seriously? Humans. You take the time to get to know a human, and by the time the human's on her deathbed, and by then the human's on her deathbed. If you're lucky, she's got kin, a daughter or a granddaughter, maybe, who's got hands and heart as good as hers. That's when you can make a human friend. And watch them go. They set their hearts on something, they'll get it. Whether it's a dragon's hoard or an emperor's throne. You have to admire that kind of dedication, even if it gets them into trouble more often than not. Dwarf names. A dwarf name is granted by a clan elder in accordance with tradition. Every proper dwarven name has been used and reused down the generations. A dwarf's name belongs to the clan, not the individual. A dwarf who misuses or brings shame to a clan name is stripped of the name and forbidden by law to use any dwarven name in its place. Male names: Adric, Alberic, Bairn, Bernd, Brod. I'm not going to read all these. You can see the female names, and you can see some of the clan names. Dwarf traits. Your dwarf character has an assortment of inborn abilities, part and parcel of dwarven nature. Ability score increase, your constitution score increases by 2. Age, dwarves mature at the same rate as humans, but they're considered young until they reach the age of 50. On average, they live about 350 years. Size, dwarves stand between 4 and 5 feet tall and average about 150 pounds. Your size is medium. Speed, your base walking speed is 25 feet. Your speed is not reduced by wearing heavy armor. Dark vision. Accustomed to life underground, you have superior vision in dark and dim conditions. You can see in dim light within 60 feet of you as if it were bright light, and in darkness as if it were dim light. You can't discern color in darkness, only shades of gray. Dwarven resilience. You have advantage on saving throws against poison, and you have resistance against poison damage, explained in Chapter 9, Combat. Dwarven combat training. You have proficiency with the battle axe, hand axe, light hammer, and warhammer. Tool proficiency. You gain proficiency with the artisan's tools of your choice: smith's tools, brewer's supplies, or mason's tools. Stone cutting. Whenever you make an intelligence, history, check related to the origin of stonework, you are considered proficient in the history skill and add double your proficiency bonus to the check instead of your normal proficiency bonus. Languages. You can speak, read, and write Common and Dwarvish. Dwarvish is full of hard consonants and guttural sounds, and those characteristics spill over to whatever other language a dwarf might speak. Subrace. 2 main subraces of dwarves populate the worlds of D&D: hill dwarves and mountain dwarves. Choose one of those subraces. No agar? What? Duergar. In cities deep in the Underdark live the Duergar, or Grey Dwarves. After centuries of captivity and torment by mind flayers, they have innate magical abilities to become invisible and temporarily grow to giant size? What? Oh, good for them. Hill Dwarf. As a Hill Dwarf, you have keen senses, deep intuition, and remarkable resilience. The gold dwarves of Faerun in their mighty southern kingdoms are hill dwarves, as are the exiled Nidar and the debased Klar of Kryn. In the Dragonlance setting, I always get offended whenever they mention Dragonlance now, because I'm always afraid they're going to say something wrong. The Klar, debased, I don't know, aren't they the poisoned ones? Ability score increase, your wisdom score increases by 1. Dwarven toughness, your hit points maximum increases by 1, and it increases by 1 every time you gain a level. That's awesome. Jeez. Mountain Dwarf. As a Mountain Dwarf, you are strong and hardy, accustomed to a difficult life and rugged terrain. You're probably on the tall side for a dwarf and tend toward lighter coloration. The Shield Dwarves of Northern Faerun, as well as the ruling Hylar clan and the noble Daywar clan of Dragonlance, are Mountain Dwarves. Ability score increases. Your strength score increases by 2. Dwarven armor training. You have proficiency with light and medium armor. All right, before I get into this, take a sip of tea. All right. Oh, we got a... Heck yeah. I've never imagined such beauty existed, Goldmoon said softly. The day's march had been difficult, but the reward at the end was beyond their dreams. The companions stood on a high cliff over the fabled city of Quellenost. 4 slender spires rose from the city's corners like glistening spindles, their brilliant white stone marbled with shining silver. Graceful arches swooping from spire to spire soared through the air. Crafted by ancient dwarven metalsmiths, they were strong enough to hold the weight of an army, yet they appeared so delicate that a bird lighting on them might overthrow the balance. These glistening arches were the city's only boundaries. There was no wall around Quellenost. The elven city opened its arms lovingly into the wilderness. Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, Dragons of Autumn Twilight. I love that book. Elves are a magical people of otherworldly grace, living in the world but not entirely part of it. They live in places of ethereal beauty in the midst of ancient forests, or silvery spires glittering with fairy light, where soft music drifts through the air and gentle fragrances waft on the breeze. Elves love nature and magic, art and artistry, music and poetry, and the good things of the world. Slender and graceful. With their unearthly grace and fine features, elves appear hauntingly beautiful to humans and members of many other races. They're slightly shorter than humans on average, ranging from well under 5 feet tall to just over 6. They're more slender than humans, weighing only 100 to 145 pounds. Males and females are about the same height, and males are only marginally heavier than females. Elves' coloration encompasses the normal human range and also includes skin in shades of copper, bronze, and almost bluish white, hair of green or blue, and eyes like pools of liquid gold or silver. Elves have no facial hair and little body hair. They favor elegant clothing in bright colors, and they enjoy simple yet lovely jewelry. A timeless perspective. Elves can live well over 700 years, giving them a broad perspective on events that might trouble their shorter-lived races more deeply. They're more often amused than excited, and more likely to be curious than greedy. They tend to remain aloof and unfazed by petty happenstance. When pursuing a goal, however, whether adventuring on a mission or learning a new skill or art, elves can be focused and relentless. They're slow to make friends and enemies, and even slower to forget them. They reply to petty insults with disdain and to serious insults with vengeance. Like the branches of a young tree, elves are flexible in the face of danger. They trust in diplomacy and compromise to resolve differences before they escalate to violence. They have been known to retreat from intrusions into their woodland homes, confident that they can simply wait the invaders out. But when the need arises, elves reveal a stern martial side, demonstrating skill with sword, bow, and strategy. Hidden woodland realms. Most elves dwell in small forest villages hidden among the trees. Elves hunt game, gather food, and grow vegetables, and their skill and magic allow them to support themselves without the need for clearing and plowing land. They're talented artisans, crafting finely worked clothes and art objects. Their contact with outsiders is usually limited, though a few elves make a good living by trade crafting items for metal, which they have no interest in mining. Elves encountered outside their own lands are commonly traveling minstrels, artists, or sages. Human nobles compete for the services of elf instructors to teach swordplay or magic to their children. Exploration and adventure. Elves take up adventuring out of wanderlust. What? We talking about Kender? Since they are so long-lived, they can enjoy centuries of exploration and discovery. They dislike the pace of human society, which is regimented from day to day, but constantly changing over decades, so they find careers that let them travel freely and set their own pace. Elves also enjoy exercising their martial prowess, or gaining greater magical power, and adventuring allows them to do so. Some might join with rebels fighting against oppression, and others might become champions of moral causes. Haughty but gracious. Although they can be haughty, elves are generally gracious even to those who fall short of their high expectations, which is most non-elves, since still they can find good in just about anyone. Dwarves. Dwarves are dull, clumsy oafs, but what they lack in humor, sophistication, and manners, they make up in valor, and I must admit, their best smiths produce art that approaches elven quality. Halflings. Halflings are people of simple pleasures, and that is not a quality to scorn. They're good folk. They care for each other and tend their gardens, and they have proven themselves tougher than they seem when the need arises. Humans. All that haste, their ambition and drive to accomplish something before their brief lives pass away. Humans' endeavor that seems so futile sometimes, but then you look at what they have accomplished, and you have to appreciate their achievements. If only they could slow down and learn some refinement. Elf names. Elves are considered children until they declare themselves adults, sometime about the 100th birthday, and before this period they're called by child names. Once declaring adulthood, an elf selects an adult name, although those who knew him or her as a youngster might continue to use the child name. Each elf's adult name is a unique creation, though it might reflect the names of respected individuals or other family members. Little distinction exists between male names and female names. The groupings here reflect only general tendencies. In addition, every elf bears a family name, typically a combination of other elvish words. Some elves traveling among humans translate their family names into common, but others retain their elf version. Child names. You guys can read these names. Male adult names, female adult names, and family names, common translations. Interesting. Elf traits. Your elf character has a variety of natural abilities, the result of thousands of years of elven refinement. Ability score increase. Your dexterity score increases by 2. Age. Although elves reach physical maturity about the same age as humans, the elves' understanding of adulthood goes beyond physical growth to encompass worldly experience. An elf typically claims adulthood and an adult name at around the age of 100 and can live to be 750 years old. Sizes. Elves range from under 5 to over 6 feet tall and have slender builds. Your size is medium. Speed. Your base walking speed is 30 feet. Dark vision. Accustomed to twilight forests and the night sky, you have superior vision in dark and dim conditions. You can see in dim light within 60 feet of you as if it were bright light, and in darkness as if it were dim light. You cannot discern color in darkness, only shades of gray. Keen senses. You have proficiency in the perception skill. Fey ancestry. You have advantage on saving throws against being charmed, and magic can't put you to sleep. Well, that's cool. Trance. Elves don't need to sleep. Instead, they meditate deeply, remaining semi-conscious for 4 hours a day. The common word for such meditation is trance. While meditating, you can dream about after a fashion. Such dreams are actually mental exercises that have become reflexive through years of practice. After resting in this way, you gain the same benefit that a human does from 8 hours of sleep. Languages. You can speak, read, and write Common and Elvish. Elvish is fluid with subtle intonations and intricate grammar. Elven literature is rich and varied, and their songs and poems are famous among other races. Many bards learn the language so that they can add Elvish ballads to their repertoires. Subrace. Ancient divides among the elven people resulted in 3 main sub-races: High Elves, Wood Elves, and Dark Elves, who are commonly called Drow. Choose one of these sub-races. In some worlds, these sub-races are divided still further, such as the Sun Elves and Moon Elves of the Forgotten Realms. So if you wish, you can choose a narrower sub-race. High Elf. As a High Elf, you have a keen mind and a mastery of at least the basics of magic. In many of the worlds of D&D, there are 2 kinds of High Elves. One type, which includes the Grey Elves and Valley Elves of Greyhawk, the Sylvanesti of Dragonlance, and the Sun Elves of the Forgotten Realms, is haughty and reclusive, believing themselves to be superior to non-elves and even other elves. The other type, including the High Elves of Greyhawk, the Quillinesty of Dragonlance, and the Moon Elves of Forgotten Realms, are more common and more friendly, and often encountered among human and other races. The Sun Elves of Farron, also called Gold Elves or Sunrise Elves, have bronze skin and hair of copper, black, or golden blonde. Their eyes are golden, silver, or black. Moon Elves, also called Silver Elves or Gray Elves, are much paler, with alabaster skin, sometimes tinged with blue. They often have hair of silver, white, black, or blue, but various shades of blonde, brown, and red are not uncommon. Their eyes are blue or green and flecked with gold. Ability score increase. Your intelligence score increases by 1. Elf weapon training. You have proficiency with longsword, short bow, and longbow. Cantrip. You know one cantrip of your choice from the wizard's spell list. Intelligence is your spellcasting ability for it. Extra language. You can speak, read, and write 1 extra language of your choice. You guys caught in Dragons of Autumn Twilight that elves are telepathic with griffins, right? But it's only royal elves. They're taught to be telepathic with griffins. That's insane. Though I really love it from like it's just like a role-playing, sort of atmospheric level. Wood Elf. As a Wood Elf, you have keen senses and intuition. Your fleet feet carry you quickly and steadily through your native forests. This category includes the Wood Elves, Grugosh of Greyhawk, and the Kaganesty of Dragonlance, as well as the races called Wood Elves in Greyhawk and in the Forgotten Realms. In Farron, Wood Elves, also called Wild Elves, Green Elves, or Forest Elves, are reclusive and distrusting of non-elves. Wood Elves' skin tends to be copperish in hue, sometimes with traces of green. Their hair tends towards browns and blacks, but occasionally blonde or copper-colored. Their eyes are green, brown, or hazel. Ability score increase. Your wisdom score increases by 1. Elf weapon training. You have proficiency with longsword, short bow, and longbow. Fleet of foot. Your base walking speed increases to 35 feet. Masks of the wild. You can attempt to hide even when you're only lightly obscured by foliage, heavy rain, falling snow, mist, and other natural phenomena. Halflings. Oh boy. Regis the halfling, the only one of his kind for hundreds of miles in any direction, locked his fingers behind his head and leaned back against the mossy blanket on the tree trunk. Regis was short, even by the standards of his diminutive race, with the fluff of his curly brown locks barely cresting the 3-foot mark, but his belly was amply thickened by his love of a good meal, or several, as the opportunities presented themselves. The crooked stick that serves as his fishing pole rose up above him, clenched between 2 of his toes, and hung out over the quiet leg between his toes. That's funny. Mirrored perfectly on the glassy surface of Mare Dulden. R.A. Salvador, The Crystal Shard. I've never read any of the Forgotten Realms novels, but that actually sounds pretty cool. The comforts of home are the goals of most halflings' lives. A place to settle in peace and quiet, far from the marauding monsters and clashing armies. A blazing fire and a generous meal, fine drink and fine conversation. Though some halflings live out their days in remote agricultural communities, others form nomadic bands that travel constantly, lured by the open road and the wide horizon, to discover the wonders of new lands and peoples. But even these wanderers love peace, food, hearth, and home, though home might be a wagon jostling around a dirt road or a raft floating downriver. Small and practical. The diminutive halflings survive in a world full of larger creatures by avoiding notice, or, barring that, avoiding offense. Standing about 3 feet tall, they appear relatively harmless, and so have managed to survive for centuries in the shadow of empires and on the edges of wars and political strife. They are inclined to be stout, weighing between 40 and 45 pounds. Halflings' skin ranges from tan to pale with a ruddy cast, and their hair is usually brown or sandy brown and wavy. They have brown or hazel eyes. Halfling men often sport long sideburns, but beards are rare among them, and mustaches even more so. They like to wear simple, comfortable, and practical clothes, favoring bright colors. Halfling practicality extends beyond their clothing. They're concerned with basic needs and simple pleasures and have little use for ostentation. Even the wealthiest of halflings keeps their treasures locked in a cell rather than on display for all to see. They have a knack for finding the most straightforward solution to a problem and have little patience for dithering. Kind and curious. Halflings are an affable and cheerful people. They cherish the bonds of family and friendship, as well as the comforts of hearth and home, harboring few dreams of gold or glory. Even adventurers among them usually venture into the world for reasons of community, friendship, wanderlust, or curiosity. They love discovering new things, even simple things, such as an exotic food or an unfamiliar style of clothing. Halflings are easily moved to pity and hate to see any living things suffer. They're generous, happily sharing what they have, even in lean times. Hey, Goldman, thanks for joining live. Blend into the crowd. Halflings are adept at fitting into a community of humans, dwarves, or elves, making themselves valuable and welcome. The combination of their inherent stealth and their unassuming nature helps halflings to avoid unwanted attention. Halflings work readily with others, and they're loyal to their friends, whether halfling or otherwise. They can display remarkable ferocity when their friends, families, or communities are threatened. Pastoral pleasantries. Most halflings live in small, peaceful communities with large farms and well-kept groves. They rarely build kingdoms of their own or even hold much land beyond the quiet shires. They typically don't recognize any sort of halfling nobility or royalty, instead looking to family elders to guide them. Families preserve their traditional ways despite the rise and fall of empires. Many halflings live among other races, while the halflings' hard work and loyal outlook offer them abundant reward and creature comforts. Some halflings' communities travel as a way of life, driving wagons or guiding boats from place to place and maintaining no permanent home. Exploring opportunities. Halflings usually set out on the adventurer's path to defend their communities, support their friends, or explore a wide and wonder-filled world. For them, adventuring is less a career than an opportunity, or sometimes a necessity. Affable and positive. Halflings try to get along with everyone else and are loath to make sweeping generalizations, especially negative ones. Dwarves. Dwarves make loyal friends, and you can count on them to keep their word. But would it hurt them to smile once in a while? Elves. They're so beautiful. Their faces, their music, their grace and all. It's like they stepped out of a wonderful dream. But there's no telling what's going on behind their smiling faces. Surely more than they'd ever let on. Humans. Humans are a lot like us, really. At least some of them are. Step out of the castles and keeps, go talk to the farmers and herders, and you'll find good, solid folk. Not that there's anything wrong with the barons and soldiers. You have to admire their conviction. And by protecting their own lands, they protect us as well. Halfling names. A halfling has a given name, a family name, and possibly a nickname. Family names are often nicknames that stuck, not suck, so tenaciously they have been passed down through the generations. You can see their male names, the female names, and the family names. Halfling traits. Your halfling character has a number of traits in common with other halflings. Ability score increase. Your dexterity score increases by 2. Age. A halfling reaches adulthood by the age of 20 and generally lives in the middle of his or her second century. Size. Halflings above about 3 feet tall and I don't know what's going on. And weigh about 40 pounds. Your size is small. Speed. Your base walking speed is 25 feet. Lucky. When you roll a 1 on a d20 for an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, you can re-roll the die and must use the new roll. That's cool. I didn't know that. Brave. You have advantage on its saving throws against being frightened. Halfling nimbleness. You know what's kind of funny about the frightened thing? That's like, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons had halflings because of legal issues with hobbits and Lord of the Rings. DragonLance made Kender to differentiate them from not having halflings. Now, 5th edition halflings are taking up the fearlessness of the Kender that they replaced in previous editions. So it's this weird circle of what? All right. Halfling nimbleness. You can move through the space of any creature that is of a size larger than yours. Languages. You can speak, read, and write common halfling. Halfling language isn't secret, but halflings are loath to share it with others. They write very little, so they don't have a rich body of literature. Their oral tradition, however, is very strong. Almost all halflings speak common to converse with the people in whose lands they dwell or through which they are traveling. Subrace. The 2 main kinds of halflings, Lightfoot and Stout, are more like closely related families than true subraces. Choose one of these subraces. As a Lightfoot halfling, you can easily hide from notice, even using other people as cover. You're inclined to be affable and get along well with others. In the Forgotten Realms, Lightfoot halflings have spread the farthest and thus are the most common variety. Lightfoots are more prone to wanderlust than other halflings and often dwell alongside other races or take up nomadic life. In the world of Greyhawk, these halflings are called Harefeet or Tall Fellows. Ability score increase. Your charisma score increases by 1. Naturally stealthy. You can attempt to hide even when you are obscured only by a creature that is at least 1 size larger than you. As a stout halfling, you're hardier than the average and have some resistance to poison. Some say that stouts have dwarven blood. In the Forgotten Realms, these halflings are called Stronghearts, and they're most common in the south. Ability score increase. Your constitution score increases by 1. Stout resilience. You have advantage on saving throws against poison, and you have a resistance against poison damage. Oof. You know I'm going to. Apocalypse Dan. You know I will. All right, I think humans is going to be the last one I do for tonight. Humans. These were the stories of a restless people who long ago took to the seas and rivers in longboats, first to pillage and terrorize, then to settle. Yet there was an energy, a love of adventure that sang from every page. Long into the night, Lyriel read, lighting candle after precious candle. She'd never given much thought to humans, but these stories fascinated her. In these yellowed pages were tales of bold heroes, strange and fierce animals, mighty primitive gods, and a magic that was part and fabric of that distant land. Elaine Cunningham, daughter of the Drow. In the reckonings of most worlds, humans are the youngest of the common races, late to arrive on the world scene and short-lived in comparison to dwarves, elves, and dragons. Perhaps it's because of their shorter lives that they strike to achieve as much as they can in the years they're given. Or maybe they feel they have something to prove to the elder races, and that's why they build their mighty empires on the foundation of conquest and trade. Whatever drives them, humans are the innovators, the achievers, and the pioneers of worlds. A broad spectrum. With their penchant for migration and conquest, humans are more physically diverse than other common races. There is no typical human. An individual can stand from 5 feet to a little over 6 feet tall and weigh from 125 to 250 pounds. Human skin shades range from nearly black to very pale, and hair colors from black to blonde, curly, kinky, or straight. Males might sport facial hair that is sparse or thick. A lot of humans have a dash of non-human blood, revealing hints of elf, orc, or other lineages. Humans reach adulthood in their late teens and rarely live even a single century. Variety in all things. Humans are the most adaptable and ambitious people among the common races. They have widely varied tastes, morals, and customs in many different lands where they have settled. When they settle, though, they stay. They build cities to last for the ages and great kingdoms that can persist for long centuries. An individual human might have a relatively short lifespan, but a human nation or culture preserves traditions with origins far beyond the reach of any single human's memory. They live fully in the present, making them well suited to the adventuring life, but also plan for the future, striving to leave a lasting legacy. Individually, as a group, humans are adaptable opportunists, and they stay alert to changing political and social dynamics. Hey, Michael, thanks for joining live. Lasting institutions. Where a single elf or dwarf might take on the responsibility of guarding a special location or a powerful secret, humans found sacred orders and institutions for such purposes. While dwarf clans and halfling elders pass on the ancient traditions of each new generation, human temples, governments, libraries, and codes of law fix their traditions in the bedrock of history. Humans dream of immortality, but, except for those few who seek undeath or divine ascension to escape death's clutches, they achieve it by ensuring that they will be remembered when they're gone. Although some humans can be xenophobic, in general, their societies are inclusive. Human lands welcome large numbers of non-humans compared to the proportions of humans who live in non-human lands. Exemplars of ambition. Humans who seek adventure are the most daring and ambitious members of a daring and ambitious race. They seek to earn glory in the eyes of their fellows by amassing power, wealth, and fame. More than other people, humans champion causes rather than territories or groups. Everyone's second best friends. Just as readily as they mix with each other, humans mingle with members of other races. They get along with almost everyone, though they might not be close to many. Humans serve as ambassadors, diplomats, magistrates, merchants, and functionaries of all kinds. Dwarves. They're stout folk, stalwart friends, and true to their word. Their greed for gold is their downfall, though. Elves. It's best not to wander into elven woods. They don't like intruders, and you'll likely be bewitched as peppered with arrows. Still, if an elf can get past that damned racial pride and actually treat you like an equal, you can learn a lot from them. Halflings. It's hard to beat a meal in a halfling home, as long as you don't crack your head on the ceiling. Good food and good stories in front of a nice warm fire. If halflings have a shred of ambition, they might really amount to something. Human names and ethnicities. Having so much more variety than other cultures, humans as a whole have no typical names. Some human parents give their children names from other languages, such as Dwarvish or Elvish, pronounced more or less correctly, but most parents give names that are linked to their region's culture or to the naming traditions of their ancestors. The material culture and physical characteristics of humans can change wildly from region to region. In the Forgotten Realms, for example, the clothing, architecture, cuisine, music, and literature are different in the northwestern lands of the southern marches than in the distant Termish or Impiltur to the east, and even more distinctive in the far-off Kara-Tur. Human physical characteristics, though, vary widely to the ancient migrations of the earliest humans, so that the humans of the Silver Marches have every possible variation of coloration and features. I'm sorry, I'm sitting here thinking about making a comment about this and then still reading. So Kara-Tur was the region that was created after in second edition after the Oriental Adventures from Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, right? Like I think that's the place. And Oriental Adventures was what Advanced Dungeons and Dragons in Reflection refers to as 1.5 AD&D, because it completely altered a lot of game mechanics. Just for example, non-weapon proficiencies didn't exist until that. I don't even think like martial arts weapon fighting styles existed in D&D before Oriental Adventures Handbook. So anyway, it's a great little book to pick up. In the Forgotten Realms, 9 human ethnic groups are widely recognized, though over a dozen others are found in more localized areas of Faerun. These groups and the typical names of their members can be used as inspiration no matter which world your human is in. Kalashite. Shorter and slighter in build than most other humans, Kalashites have dusky brown skin, hair, and eyes. They're found primarily in southwest Faerun. Kalashite names, and you can see just a bunch of that. Kondathar. Kondathars are slender, tawny-skinned folk with brown hair that ranges from almost blonde to almost black. Most are tall and have green or brown eyes, but these traits are hardly universal. Humans of Kondathan? I don't know. Descent dominate the central lands of Faerun around the Inner Sea. And you can see some of their name options there. Damaran. Found primarily in the northwest of Faerun, Damarans are of moderate height and build, with skin hues ranging from tawny to fair. Their hair is usually brown or black, and their eye color varies widely, though brown is most common, and you can see some of their names right there. Iluskan. Iluskans are tall, fair-skinned folk with blue or steely gray eyes. Most have raven black hair, but those who inhabit the extreme northwest have blonde, red, or light brown hair. You can see some of their names. Mulan? What? Dominant in the eastern and southeastern shores of the Inner Sea, the Mulan are generally tall, slim, and amber-skinned, with eyes of hazel or brown. And they'll make a man out of you. Their hair ranges from black to dark brown, but in the lands where the Mulan are most prominent, nobles and many other Mulan shave off all their hair. And you can see a bunch of names there. Rashemi. Why are they doing... Like, that's a... Here's what bothers me. Forgotten Realms is just one of the settings in D&D. Why are they using that as the basis of the game? That doesn't make sense. Should be Dragonlance. I'm just going to pout. I'm going to hold my breath for a minute. Hold on. All right. Most often found in the east of the Inner Sea and often intermingled with the Mulan, Rashemis tend to be short, stout, and muscular. They usually have dusky skin, dark eyes, and thick black hair. And you can see some of their names. Shao. The Shao are the most numerous and powerful ethnic group in Kara-Tur, far to the east of Faerun. They're yellowish bronze in hue with black hair and dark eyes. Shao surnames are usually presented before the given name. And there's a bunch of their names. Tetherian. Widespread among the entire Sword Coast and the western edge of Faerun, Tetherians are of medium build and height, with dusky skin that tends to grow fairer and farther north they dwell. The further north they dwell. Their hair and eye color varies widely, but brown hair and blue eyes are the most common. Tetherians primarily use Kondathan names. Turami, native to the south... Why are they... I'm not going to read this anymore. Variant human traits. If your campaign uses the optional feat rules from Chapter 6, your Dungeon Master might allow these variant traits, all of which replace the human's ability score increase trait. Wait, I didn't know feats were optional. I thought that was just a feature of 5e. I wonder why they would make that optional. Ability score increase. 2 different ability scores of your choice increase by 1. Skills. You gain proficiency in 1 skill of your choice. Feat. You gain 1 feat of your choice. But what if the DM doesn't use feats because it's an optional rule? Does that mean they don't get a feat? Human traits. It's hard to make generalizations about humans, but your human character has these traits. Ability score increase. Your ability scores each increase by 1. Each? All of them? Age. Humans reach adulthood in their late teens and live less than a century. Size. Humans vary widely in height and build, from barely 5 feet to well over 6 feet tall, regardless of your position in the range. Your size is medium. Speed. Your base walking speed is 30. Languages. You can speak, read, and write Common and 1 extra language of your choice. Humans typically learn the languages of other peoples they deal with, including obscure dialects. They're fond of sprinkling their speech with words borrowed from other tongues, orc curses, Elvish musical expressions, Dwarvish military phrases, and so on. Okay, so I'm going to stop at uncommon races for tonight because I'm getting tongue-tied trying to speak. This is interesting. I'm learning a lot just from the first 2 chapters already about this version of D&D. I was surprised by. So I'm glad I'm doing this. Thank you guys for tuning in and being a part of this reading. I mean, that's pretty cool. But this is going to do it for this episode of Gaming Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition. What do you think of the Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition game system? Is it too heroic and safe as a system? And would you ever run a D&D 5e game? Feel free to email me at info@dlsaga.com or leave a comment below. I'd like to take a moment and remind you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, ring the bell to get notified about upcoming videos, and click that like button. This all goes to help other Dragonlance fans learn about this channel and its content. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the DragonLance Saga, and I hope you'll join me in the celebration. Thank you for watching. This has been Adam with DragonLance Saga, and until next time, Slanjavar!